Welcome to Peter and Roughie's football show here on STV. Celtic manager Brendan Rodgers says it is not a step down from the Premier League as he takes over the Parkhead hot seat. SFA Chief Executive Stuart Regan says there'll be an independent investigation into the trouble at the Scottish Cup final. And Lee Clark says changes need to be made at Kilmarnock after their playoff win over Falkirk yesterday. Just a few of the talking points in the company of Alan Rough, and our bootroom guest, I'm delighted to say, is former Aberdeen and Celtic striker Joe Miller. So, Brendan Rodgers, lads, arrives in Glasgow, private jet, touches down and then gets to Celtic Park, and I think if he didn't realise the enormity of the job in hand, he certainly does now. Roughie, 10,000 plus Celtic fans there to welcome him.
Yeah, fantastic reception, and I'm sure he'll enjoy every minute of it. You know, he's came from Liverpool, which is another big club, but certainly with that attendance today and the reception they got, I'm sure it would have made him that wee bit more excited and getting the job started.
Yeah, absolutely no surprise to you, Joe Miller, that the Celtic fans have really bought into his appointment.
Yeah, I think they can see similarities to when Martin O'Neill took over, so I think there's a lot to be excited about being a Celtic fan for next season, so I think he'll do well.
Yep, obviously there's a number of questions that I think everyone wanted to ask the former Liverpool manager who's now in there at Celtic. Of course, the first one is the objectives.
For me, the objective is pretty clear. It's to continue with the domination of Scottish football, of Celtic, and also to make an impact in European football. And I think the traditions of Celtic being the first British team to win the European Cup is very important, and there's been many great nights here in European football here at Parkhead. So that opportunity to revive those fortunes to get into Champions League and obviously continue with Scottish football domination, and it's pretty clear what that objective is.
I think when you look at the money that they've put out to get Brendan Rodgers in the first place, I wouldn't imagine he'll have a small budget, Roughie.
No, I think the fans will be eagerly waiting to see where they're going. You know, he's already stated there that he wants European football. The fans want European football. He wants to be a success in Europe. So I think the first couple of signings will be a target of where he's going, and I think everybody will be anticipating who it's going to be.
Yeah, this is what he had to say about the Champions League.
First and foremost, we would want to be competing in Champions League, and in order for that you got to qualify and you got to get there, and then certainly your objective then is, can you get out of group stages and beyond. I think I said, of course it's difficult, you know, with the money that's around, but if you look at Porto, Benfica, those sorts of teams, you know, those are teams that are, you know, dominant in their own league, qualify into European football, Champions League, and then they go on and can make a good fist of it.
So the difference from Liverpool, when he had a world-class striker and a formidable budget, Joe, he now realises he's going to have to curtail that blueprint and maybe copy a couple of the clubs that he mentioned there.
Yeah, he does, but I think he realises that the money isn't as much as it is in the English Premiership, you know, with all the sponsorship and the TV rights and things like that. So he'll have to adjust a little. But I'm sure he'll use his contacts and his knowledge of the English game to try and entice a few good players here, like the teams he's mentioned. They've built good they've developed good players from within. So I think that's his remit. He's going to look at the squad and assess that first and foremost before he goes into the transfer market.
How many do you think he needs, Roughie?
I think first of all he'll have to move on a few. You know, obviously it was very evident this year that a lot of them weren't really up to it, and that'll be the main thing, depending on how long their contracts have got to go. You know, but he will identify, and he'll, as Joe said, he'll have to feed off people who have been there a long time. But I think he needs at least 4 or 5 players. I think he's got to start by getting into the Champions League. He's got to hit the ground running, and that comes very, very quickly, so he'll have to act quickly himself.
Yeah, here's what he had to say about his budget.
You know, I think sometimes people look and want you to go and buy, you know, a £10 million player or a £5 million player, but your first look has to be within your own youth department. You know, some wonderful young players here, so you might have a £5-10 million player actually in your own academy. So my first look will always be to look there. I think we've got a good squad here, and of course we want to improve on it, and we'll look to do that over the over the coming years, and have a good look at pre-season and see how it develops.
Be interesting to see if he does have a £5 million player in the youth squad. That would be something I think the Celtic fans would welcome, but I don't think too many of them think there are.
No, I don't. But you just need to look at what Tierney's done over the past season. So he's been given his chance and he's taken it, and he's already been quoted to being a £10 million player already. So I think it's good for the young kids that are playing there just now, that if they get an opportunity, then they could be on to bigger things. But it's all. I think the Celtic fans want to see a bit of stability now. I think the club overall has assessed the whole situation over the past couple of seasons, and I think they've realised what they've got to do, and they've got off to a great start by bringing in a quality manager. He's going to assess everything now, assess all the players that are there, and it'll be down to him to bring in good players.
Yep. Okay. So, as you can see, huge crowds there at Celtic Park to welcome Brendan Rodgers as the new Celtic manager. Now on to the Scottish Cup final. Hard to believe that we're not talking so positively about a 3-2 win for Hibernian, but first and foremost, I think we have to deal with the issue of the crowd trouble at the end of the game. There are a number of issues to deal with, and a number of issues that the SFA will have to deal with. But first and foremost, this is what the SFA Chief Executive Stuart Regan had to say not too soon after the game had finished.
It's truly shocking, appalling to see fans on the pitch in the way that they were. The damage that's been caused, the disruption to what has been, a fantastic football match, it's fair to say, and it's taken the gloss off what should have been a memorable occasion for Hibernian. So we're all really disappointed, very, very shocked, very upset about it. I think, there have been a whole series of events taking place in football over the years. This is one of the worst I've seen for a number of years. I never like to see police horses on a pitch. I think it damages the reputation of the game. But, we've got a job to do. We'll deal with it. We'll identify the facts and find out what's happened, and we'll take the appropriate steps.
OK, before we hear from Rod Petrie, Alan Stubbs, and of course a statement that came out from Rangers Football Club, the scenes at the end, Roughie, while not on the same scale as the 1980 Scottish Cup final, certainly disturbing.
Yeah, it is disturbing. You can't condone it at all. We all look at health and safety in football, and certainly fans running around the park, although they might say initially it was a joyful occasion, but it turned into something that we didn't want to see, and it was horrible. I think obviously as it went on, the hooligan element took over. I mean, there were fans still celebrating the game, but it was the hooligans at the game. It really spoiled it for everybody else. Yeah,
I think a number of pictures and images will be used by the police in this situation because quite simply, Joe, fans coming on to celebrate winning the cup is one thing. Fans going on to inflict damage on the pitch, fans going on to inflict not only abuse but physical harm to other spectators is breaking the law.
Yeah, it is, and I think the bottom line, Peter, there should have not been one fan on the pitch. Should have been not one fan being allowed to break onto the pitch. I know we see a lot of it down in England when they're celebrating champions, promotion and a relegation playoff and things like that. We see it down south, and there doesn't seem to be much trouble, but we've seen elements of trouble there on Saturday, and that should not happen. I think it's a celebration for the players and the football teams that are playing on the field. I don't think a fan should even enter the field of play.
Yep. Now there'll be questions asked of the security around the ground, and of course the reaction time undoubtedly of the police, the conduct of the Hibs supporters, the conduct of Rangers supporters will obviously be under the microscope as well. And then innocence or guilt will be attributed after we get the investigation. Here is the statement from the SFA. There was a call for an independent investigation, and they've responded today. The Scottish FA has today initiated the process of appointing an independent commission to investigate the circumstances of Saturday's Scottish Cup final disorder. A chairperson will be appointed in early course, and the commission's remit will be to review all operational matters relating to the event and, of course, the hosting of the final. It'll be convened to analyse the processes and protocols was undertaken in the staging of the match, and I would encourage all relevant stakeholders to contribute to it. In the interests of transparency, the Commission's findings will also be published in full. That's what I think a number of people wanted to see, Roughie, just briefly.
Yeah, and I don't think it matters how long it takes. You know, we have to get it right and go through the process as you've just read out there.
Okay, we will discuss that in greater detail after the break. We'll also look at the Homeless World Cup draw. We'll talk about Joey Barton. So much more on the Football Show. Welcome back to Peter and Roughie's Football Show on this Monday night. Alan Rough and Joe Miller are on the show tonight to talk about all the issues over the course of the weekend. Of course, just prior to the break, we were talking about the disturbing scenes at the end of the Scottish Cup final. We will eventually get to the game, but right after the game, as well as Stuart Regan, this was Rod Petrie, the chairman of Hibernian's take on the Troubles.
Well, I don't think it was going to be calamitous. I think the police and the stewards and everybody at Hampden Park deserves great credit for the professional manner in which they dealt with the situation at the end. 114 years of exuberance meant that we had to wait a bit longer for the presentation, but I think everybody played their part to ensure that there was order throughout and that the presentation was enabled to happen.
If I'm critical of that line, exuberance may have been attributed to some Hibernian fans, but not the core at the other end, who clearly were goading Rangers fans and trying to incite the trouble that eventually ensued, Joe.
Yeah, it does, but you know, it's a Scottish Cup final, and it's the clubs, it's the players that have worked hard to get there. It's a celebration for the fans. It's meant to be a celebration for the fans, for both sets of fans. But at the end of the day, there should not have been one fan allowed to break into that park. Just
picking up on that point, you said that, Joe. If anything, Roughie, when you consider the nature of the match and what's at stake, and there was a bit of attention going up to this cup final as well, there should have been more stewards around that perimeter to make sure that that just wasn't on the cards. Maybe there's a possibility of more police, but I think once we get the investigation, that will all become apparent. I mean, you can only guess at what the fines, sanctions, or whatever penalties that one or both clubs might incur in this one.
Yeah, but I think initially everybody got caught out. I think initially when we saw the fans coming on there, although we've already said it shouldn't happen, when it initially happened, it looked a joyous bit. Everybody looked at it and went, oh, they're celebrating, they're having a good time. But as you said, the further I went down the park, the obvious was going to happen, because as we all know, there's an element in the game, who just can't behave, and that's what happened.
Yeah, one thing I didn't like, Roughie, it was the fact that some of the players were assaulted in backroom staff. That has to be looked at as well.
Yeah, of course it has. I mean, you can't have that. That was good that the players' union came out in protection of the players. That's what everything's all about. You can't have that happening. I mean, yeah, you want to see people celebrating, but not like that, and it's just something that needs to get cleared up.
Yeah, well, the Rangers players and, as you would expect, the Rangers backroom staff didn't come out for the medal presentation. Eventually, Hibs players were able to pick up the trophy, but they stayed on the podium in the stand itself. This is the Hibs manager, Alan Stubbs' take on it.
It's not going to take away the satisfaction of what we've just achieved, but I think on behalf of the club, I can understand the weight, but I don't condone it. We would have much been prepared to have celebrated, the way, cup winners do. It's unfortunate, but they've had a lot thrown at them, over the. I'm glad. Sammy, who's the oldest 106, then he's managed to see it. It's disappointing, and we don't want to see that. But from our point of view, it was a fantastic game. I think two very good teams, and we managed to do it and show a little bit of a bottle. Wonder whether we Hibsed it, or whether we just did it.
Just on the basis of the game, Roughie, if you were talking solely about 90 minutes, what a game.
Yeah, I think both sets of teams deserve a lot of credit. They put up a spectacle for a cup final, and that's what you want to see. I think all the goals were terrific, and the excitement, right, swaying back and forward. Was nobody sitting in. You know, they went. Both of them went for the jugular. Fantastic goals scored. And if you're a Hibs supporter, the result at the end was to put a smile on your face.
Yeah, 114 years, a long time to wait, Joe, and finally they got the monkey off the back.
Yeah, that's a disappointing thing for Alan Stubbs and for a lot of Hibs fans, genuine Hibs fans who didn't cause any trouble. It's a disappointing. You know, you're wanting to talk about the performance of Hibs and how they won the cup. It was a great game. It was a great game of football with both teams. But Hibs were exceptional. There was a few great performances individually. And you want to be talking about that, but instead we're talking about the scenes afterwards, which is disappointing. And that's disappointed Alan. But I think that everybody can move on once this is all investigated and looked into.
Yeah, Rangers did release a statement, quite a long-winded statement at that. Here's some of the key points in it. Of course, it was clear to most of those who watched in horror that the SFA's security procedures failed when Hibernian's fans went over the top in their thousands. It is to be hoped that all of Scottish football will share Rangers' disgust, and any attempts to attach blame to our supporters for the disgraceful and violent behaviour which led to our players and fans fearing for their safety will not be accepted or tolerated by this club. We acknowledge that a tiny minority of Rangers fans also encroached on the pitch, but only after having been faced with prolonged and severe provocation, and in order to protect our players and officials who were being visibly attacked in front of them. Any club supporters would have done the same. I don't think that statement at the time was helpful, Roughie, and I think the suggestion that it won't be tolerated by the club, again, equally unhelpful. I think basically right now the investigation which Rangers called for is the appropriate way forward. That will then allow a group of people to deliver their findings on whether there is innocent or guilt. If there are any fans who've encroached onto the pitch, which they shouldn't have done, which Joe has mentioned, then they will be dealt with, especially if, as we have mentioned, they've been involved in acts of disorder or indeed violence, and that is just basically the laws of the land.
Yeah, it's good that I think the association have acted very quickly. You know, it could take a while before we get to the bottom of it, but I would like to think that when it does come to an end, as it did with Motherwell. You know, we waited and they got it right, and they punished the Motherwell accordingly. Whoever has to be punished will be punished, you know, but I would like to think the police would take it into their own hands to the hooligan element of it. We've got CCTV, surely we can identify it, but that's for another time.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we will deal with the facts when they come out and then discuss it on the programme. There was a game yesterday. It went off trouble-free. In the end, Kilmarnock 4-0 winners against Falkirk, and they remain in the Premiership. But Lee Clark, clearly a relieved man.
Just proud of the players for delivering a performance like that under pressure. We've been the better team in both games. There was no doubt about it. It was a tough pill to swallow on Thursday evening. You know, we would have been disappointed with 0-0, but when we got hit with the sucker punch, it was tough to take. But we just relaxed them in the last 2 days. We knew the performance had been good enough, so we needed the same again. We needed a big start. Didn't expect 2 goals quickly like that, but we needed to be on the front foot.
Great credit to him, Joe. He's galvanised that side, whatever he did this week to try and relax them. It worked.
Yeah, it did. You know, it's always difficult to come back from going behind from the first leg of the playoff, but his team went about their business in a good fashion. But you know, there was a wee bit of over exuberance when there were their celebrations. You know, it's a playoff at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You know, in a relegation battle, but and promotion battle to stay in the league for Kilmarnock. But at the end of the day, you know, he's got a result there. But it's going to be interesting to see how he does next season, where he's going to get a fresh start and see what he can put his impact into the club now.
Yeah.
Because he came midway through the season. So
Okay, he has mentioned changes need to be made. Earlier on today, we were out at the Old Fruit Market to catch up with the draw for the Homeless World Cup. Just quickly, here are the details of it, because it will be on STV Glasgow, STV Edinburgh, and covered extensively by STV. There is the men's draw. Scotland in there with Bosnia and Herzegovina, Norway, Hong Kong, Grenada and Egypt. And we'll open with Scotland against Hong Kong. Really looking forward to that on the 10th to the 16th of July. And there is the women's draw for the Homeless World Cup. Netherlands, Kenya, Scotland, Kazakhstan, Wales, Ivory Coast, Norway and the United States. Certainly looking forward to it. Do join us if you can from the 10th to the 16th of July. I think it's only right and proper that I finish with this tweet that I put out almost at half time in the game at Tynecastle between Hearts and Hibernian in the Scottish Cup earlier rounds. It was quite simply 2-0 to Hearts, Roughie. The Jambos looked in complete control, but there was one monumental fight back. Here was my tweet. It was a peach. Game over, 2-0 to the Jam Tarts. The wait goes on for the Hibbies. # Scottish Cup. To all those Hibbies out there, I apologise. I got it wrong. And boy, have you let me know about it. From Joe Miller, from Alan Ruff. I tipped Hibs to win the cup. Well done. Good night.